Welcome back to Stationeers, and it's time for an explainy episode. I have been building some stuff off camera. I'm going to show them on camera mainly because there's just lots to explain and I want to fit it in one episode, so please excuse me if I'm not building the stuff as I'm going this episode. I want to get everything out of the way. First of all, I needed some way to quickly just charge these batteries. I've been using a lot of power, so I put a transformer in. That's going to be very important to protect the rest of the network, and currently it's set to 3.5 kilowatts. Okay, so these cables should be able to deal with up to 5, but I've left that there at the moment. Even if you set it to 4.9, there are instances if you turn your entire base on at once, it can cause spikes which can blow these cables. Okay, so behind that I've put another power controller just to separate the two cable types, because below here I've put heavy cable coil, which can deal with 100 kilowatts, I think, or something like that. So that is going into the solid generator, which you can put coal in and just switch it on, and that will work. Yeah. So I've also put down lots and lots of flooring. It helps me not have to trip over pipes all the time, but I'll rip up the flooring wherever I need to explain stuff. Let's go and take a look at our cooling setup. It's around here. See, all this nice space is now got flooring. So this I'll explain in a second. Ignore that. Ignore the man behind the curtain. I did get some feedback between the episodes of people saying you don't need this loop. I do. Yes, there is no real flow through the pipes as such, but let me try and explain this a little bit again. This filtration unit is constantly drawing from this side, okay? And when it draws from this side, it's going to draw whatever's in this pipe. So we want that to be pollutant. Oh, it's turned on. Okay, so we want that to be pollutant. Pollutant's going to be pushed through to this side. If we didn't have a return bringing back the pollutant, it would just empty this side of all pollutant. So I've put a valve here to separate it entirely from our filtration system. This is off most of the time. We'll keep the same amount of pollutant in here. We don't need any more. And if I didn't do that, then I would have to keep feeding it from the filtration tank. I've moved it from a portable tank up to a full one. There's no other difference. That just comes straight out of this filtration unit and up. I'll need to remap this cable along that wall instead of over the top here, but I'll do that in a little bit. So we've got pollutant coming around, and in here, here's where we're detecting it, and it's going to get mixed with stuff here. So cold gas. That's going to go in, and then the cold gas is going to filter out and go back into the atmosphere. But the point is that this pollutant's constantly circulating and getting cooled by the gas alone. So as long as we keep a return line, we're fine. If you remove it, all that happens is the pollutant builds up in that line. Yes, it still works-ish, except for the fact that now when we inject the cool gas, we can't inject the cool gas on this side because it'll just go straight out the waste. And if we inserted it on the other side, like there, then it wouldn't get filtered. So we need that return line. Sorry to anyone who wants me to remove it. Okay, so we've got this system that's working very, very well. It can keep the temperature in there down to whatever we want to. This episode, however, I also want to be able to heat it. Now, for this particular use case, we don't really need much heating. It's a hydroponics bay. The sunlight itself will actually heat that and keep it essentially warm, if not too warm. However, if we extend this system in future to heating the rest of the base, because it is a very nice passive system, then we're going to need some way of heating these. So what happens instead? I've not got the atmospheric analyzer cartridge, have I? Let me just put that back. I was using the power cartridge. Let me just swap those over. Yep, there we go. So we can see that's 34 degrees at the moment. I've set it to 35. So that's perfectly fine because we know the temperature in there is going to be within a degree or two of 34 degrees. Ideal for growing, okay? Now, if that was too cold, like for example, if I don't know, turned on this filtration unit and it started extracting all the O2 in there, and then the other system, this one, kicked in and started supplying carbon dioxide, then this room would get cold. Just by the fact we're injecting cold gas into it. And if we're going to do that, then we need some way of heating it as well. And that's one way of doing it. So I'm not going to turn it on for now. But you get the idea. We are going to need some way of heating that pollutant if we want a nice passive system in there. And indeed in the rest of the base. The only difference in the rest of the base is we would need to insert cold and hot gases into a different kind of analyzer setup that was set to a different temperature. Or we could keep it to 35 degrees if we wanted to do in the rest of the base. There's no harm in doing that. But then we'd have a much, much larger loop of radiators, and we may have to deal with a larger system to feed them. Okay? So, with that in mind, what I want to do just to start off with is just to look at this. So this volume pump consumes 200 watts when it's on. That's quite high. We could swap it with a pressure regulator, that'd be 100 watts. But these, these only use 5 watts, so that's cool. We could then use these as pumps, because if we just disconnect that side and we take out a pollutant, all this is a pump. It pulls stuff in on this side and it pulls it in really well, and we'll just eject it straight out of the waste side because there's nothing in here, there's no filter, and there's not really any output either. So we could do that. We could put the filtration unit here and have that controlled. Now we may want more finite control than turning this on and off all the time. So this is where the volume pump comes in. I've reduced this to 5 litres, which slows it down substantially. I also get quite annoyed that this is 5 litres. It should be 5 litres per second or per whatever time unit. Otherwise, the way it's labelled, it's like, I'm just going to turn it 5 litres and then I'm going to turn off. That's it. Just 5 litres. No, it's a rate, unfortunately, but I want that relabeled. I don't like that. In any case, we can use any of these pumps if we want to. They're all fine. No changes to the circuitry here, but we do have, of course, these buildings. This is where I then want to explain things. So I've run a power cable underneath here, and we're running it through a power connector, so everything on this side is, first of all, I can track it easily using the network analyzer. Second of all, I have this battery sort of buffer here. And the reason for that is what we're about to do consumes quite a bit of power. We'll come back to it in a second, but to start off with, up here we have a filtration unit. Let me just turn this back on. Do we have enough power in our main batteries? In fact, the easiest way is just to, let me just turn off half the building so that so that I don't consume too much power. Let's just turn you back on, turn the battery on, and flip the power back on. Yeah, that's still fine. Okay, let's just put those back in my inventory. So up here we have a filtration unit. That's drawing straight in from the atmosphere, so it's pulling in here. It's filtering CO2, and anything else is going back into the atmosphere. We don't really care about it. There's a pipe coming out of the output there, and it's coming into the back of this tank. So if we have a look at that with our atmosphere analyzer, you'll see at the moment there's not much in it. That's because I've been using it to test stuff, but that should be going up. I would have thought, oh no, in fact it won't be going up. That's why. See that there? That's moving stuff across here. So I'll just turn this off for a second. Now it should be going up on this. Yep, there we go, you see? It's rising. So this is our cold tank. It's minus 60 degrees in there. I've just put in an enclosure. Don't need this enclosure specifically for the cold side. We will need for the hot side. But we have a cold tank. Then we have this pressure regulator. That's transferring from the cold tank to, you guessed it, a hot tank over there. So have a look at that pipe. You'll see that pipe is 23 degrees, minus 60, 23 degrees. How is that happening? That's happening because we're using wall heaters to create a sort of airlocked, I'm not quite sure what to call it, sort of a heat exchanger. That's the best term for it. So instead of in there, I was having a wall heater and electronics. I'm going to be able to remove all of that electronics out of there. And yeah, in fact, all of the electronics. Then over here, we have some electronics. So I have a door. I have inside that. In fact, I'm going to need to undo that. So I'm going to... do I want to undo that right now? I'm going to need to turn on the system first. So let me just make sure that that is off, I want to say. Let's put that back and let's just see whether this is actually off. Then I can explain it when I've got a little bit of power. Yeah, that's a shame. Let's turn you off. Whoops, I'll put you back in my backpack. Turn you off. That's unfortunate. I'm going to need to change the logic for this to switch the heaters off. I don't want the heaters going. I want to change that to less than, I think. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what we've got here is a power switch. I wish there was a better power switch than this. I don't think there is one. The logic switch does not work. Put it on the floor here. This thing, it looks like it should. It's got two connectors. It'd be nice to be able to just attach it to a wall like that and, you know, act as a power switch. Doesn't work. Throw you away. In here, we've got two wall heaters. Now, wall heaters are a bit crazy. They only take 5 watts sort of when they're on an idle, but when they're actually sort of heating, it seems they alternate between 5 watts and 1,000 watts. So we're not using an air conditioner, which is up to 6,000 watts somewhere, but we have 2 of those, which alternates between 2,000 watts and 10. And it flickers on between the two quite rapidly. So the reason why I showed that transformer over at the batteries was that the first time I did this, I put 6 of those in there. You can see whether the cables are ready for 6. That heats the room quite quickly, as it turns out, and if I go in and then turn them on individually, it seems to be fine. However, when I use electronics, the electronics just goes, hey, a batch writer. It's basically going to take this temperature, and it says, hey, we've got a gas sensor in the room, right there, feeding into these so we can see the pressure and temperature in the room already. And it's going to say, hey, is the room temperature too low? Is it lower than this? If so, turn on all the heaters, and it just literally turns the heaters on, and then the whole system starts cycling. You know, there's like doof, 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 doof. It basically runs all the power out. Then it blows the cables. So before you do this sort of thing, particularly when you're using multiple wall heaters and definitely air conditioners as well, they're even higher, and they have the similar issue. You definitely want to make sure you've got transformers at your main batteries, and ideally before you get to this setup you want a transformer here as well. So I've put a transformer back here. It's set to 4.9, and in fact we can decrease that. We don't need 4.9. We can set it to be 3.5, the same as our other system. Okay, so this is currently drawing from our batteries, which are all the way over here. Are they? There's only 2 bars on 1 battery left. That's not great, but it is sunrise, so we should get some power back again. So when this is set to greater than, it decides that the temperature is too low and heats up this heat exchanger room. Let's go inside the heat exchanger room and I'll show you what's going on. It's quite simple. It's going to let the gas out, but that's no problem. We've got our wall heaters on the floor, and we've got this vent. We've got some radiators. So what's happening is, here's our cold, well, here's the line that comes from the cold. It goes into this tank, and let's take a look what's in that tank at the moment. It is 700 kilopascals. I've set the pressure regulator to pressure up to 2 megapascals, but the gas in there is 23 degrees. So that's not hot enough yet, but you know, it's getting there. It started at minus 60, remember. So then we have these pipes. The pipes are connected to these radiators, and the radiators are in this room. It's too tall, even though we've got a tank there. The heaters heat this room up, and then the radiators will exchange that with the gas without having any weird issues with like mixing gas types or anything like that. And the room itself is populated by this vent, and it's not on all the time, it's just triggered by this power switch. That basically pressurizes the room. I've not controlled it with electronics because there's just no point. I'm going to be doing that relatively infrequently. You could do this with a volume pump and a passive vent, but this just happens to be fine. And it's also pressurizing the room from that same tank. So we don't have to worry about mixing any set of gases. It's pure CO2 only. So if we go here, you'll see the temperature is the temperature of this environment, although it will continue to drop. Well, it needs to stabilize, but it needs to continue to drop. Instead, we're going to turn on that and repressurize it from the hot tank. So you see the pressure and the temperature quickly rising, and we get ourselves up to, I don't know, 100k? Yeah, around there-ish. It needs to stabilize for a second, but it should stabilize maybe a bit more. There we go. You can see all that does is turn that active vent on. So we're around 100k. That'll increase, obviously, the temperature goes up. But that room's now pressurized. And that room is now going to heat exchange with those radiators, which is going to heat that tank. Well, in fact, it's probably cooling the tank at the moment because it's too low temperature. So if I'm confident that our base can supply enough power, I can just switch this back to greater than, and it will turn on the wall heaters. So why don't we try that? Where is my screwdriver? There we go. So, greater. Wall heaters are on. So that should now be heating. And it is. That's the temperature of the room, not the tank, remember. We could monitor the temperature of the tank as well. That's one option. But for the moment, I've just gone for the room. And these two consoles are relatively easy to make. You just create a logic gas circuit board and put those in a regular console, and away you go. So this whole system works quite well, and I'm quite happy with it overall. I am going to want to, however, put in these walls back, just so that it covers the electronics. Is there any other place I want walls? No, maybe not. We can just fill that in with steel sheets, if I remember rightly. Yep, there we go. And that's pretty much that system. If you ever want to turn it off, you can just flip that switch and the whole system will go off. Make sense? We can then obviously continue to add to the hot tank using this pressure regulator if we want to. However, we want to make sure at the moment that there is also pressure in the cold tank. So let's just do that. Let's just take a look. So yeah, there's 100k pressure in there. And in the hot tank there is 6 times that. So we'll leave the cold tank to accumulate quite a bit more because it's the cold tank we'll primarily need in that room until we turn on the filtration system, of course. Fine. So now you'll notice I took out this pipe that was coming up here over the top and into this mixer. So we are now going to need to feed that mixer from this cold tank. So I need to go make some pipe quickly. Let me just change that, put it in my backpack. Can we make some pipe? Kit pipe? You're short of iron. Do any of this have iron? Yes, you have iron. Let's grab you. I do need to make more iron, but that's fine. I went on a bit of a mining trip before now. There we go, some pipe. Don't need very many, just 5 or 6. One thing to mention, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but if you go out mining, it may be obvious, but I may have mentioned this. Do make multiple mining belts. I don't at the moment because I don't go out mining that much, but you can basically have many mining belts, and that increases the amount of storage you are able to use quite substantially. I'm sure that's obvious to all of you, but I just thought I'd mention it just in case that isn't obvious. Let's just close you off. Yep, 12 should be enough, and then we just want our spanner. Yeah. Let's just get that removed for a second. And then we're going to want a T-junction, of course. I'm going to bring it down here. And just use a corner. Okay, so now we should be connected. Let's just get my tablet back out again. Yep, so pressure is at 1 MPa, and that is purely CO2, I hope. Yes, it is. So that's here, and it's at -30 by the time it gets through the various... Ooh, did you just turn... Oh, the battery went dead. Yeah, the system can't charge this enough at the moment, so I'm just going to turn that off for the moment. That just turns off the heating system. It was already up at 35 degrees, it looks like. Yeah. In fact, that's continuing to increase. Did I turn you off? It's just been supplied by the battery. If we really want to turn it off, we can turn that switch off there. Or indeed just pull, if I just turn off the heating side of things for now, that will make sure there isn't much of an issue. And that'll be fine. So let's head back over here. I think the rest of our base has just died. It has, because the other battery is pulling everything it can from this battery. And then occasionally you get issues like this transformer just dies. Never quite sure what's going on there. So I'm just going to cut that completely out of the circuit until I do some diagnosis later. And it's definitely off now. So you would hope the rest of our base would come on, but it doesn't. That's the weird thing about some bugs in this game. Let's just take a look. I guess we have to look with the network analyzer and just drop these pipe for a second. Let's just change over. There we go. Okay, now what's died in this system? We obviously have power. The transformer is consuming 1.4 kilowatts. That's about right for our base. But the base lights aren't on, which makes no sense. Let's go on this side. What have we got powered? The transformer small is 1.3 kilowatts. I assume that's that transformer, not the other one. Area power control on. 445 watts. Yeah, there's nothing in there that should tell me this base is off. And oh, it's just has it come back on? It's come back on. Yeah, that's just, yeah. Sometimes this game drives me at the bend, and then someone will probably say in the comments, "Hey, you forgot this," and it's quite obvious. Yeah, it happens. I do forget things. So yes, I just switched that system off for the moment. What I'm going to do is put in more solar panels just to make sure those batteries are constantly charged and this battery can constantly be kept charged. More importantly, that the heating system can get to where it needs to get to. So that's the whole system I've been building off camera. What I was going to also do is look, and in fact I'm going to need to take that back off again, aren't I? I'm going to look at this. There's a slight problem with this in that it will fight itself at that temperature, because it's going to shut off the heaters when it gets just above that temperature, and then when it goes just below that temperature, it's going to turn them back on, and it's going to fight backwards and forwards across that. So I may need to improve this with a Schmitt trigger. I did that in the previous season to control the solid generator to make sure that wasn't turning on and off constantly to keep the power levels at a set power amount. So I could do that as well. And then we're also going to want to, I guess, just insert the heat side of this. So we're going to need to grab probably the pipe from here or something like that, bring it down, bring it across, and then mix the two, and maybe put another pipe, for example, have a pipe there, and then have these two go in either side of this pipe, and this pipe will also be connected to the pollutant. So I'll go and just sort some of that bit out, and we'll come back. Okay, Schmitt Triggers. This is the one that confuses people. Okay, so this is fairly easy to understand. So what we've got currently set up, what's the current room temperature? I've got it switched off at the moment. And yeah, those of you noticed I switched this switch the wrong way. Yeah, so it is now currently off. That's fine. So we have this side of things, which is reading the current room temperature. Because the chip's off, it's not showing the current value. We're taking that and saying, is it greater than this value? That's the minimum value. And if so, then write 1, and then use that to write the heaters. Simple. They'll heat until they hit this minimum value, and then they'll cut off. But that's not what we want. We want them to heat anytime they're under one value, but over another value, i.e. to keep it in a nice range that stops them from switching on and off rapidly. Okay, so we might want to keep this room between 70 and 100 degrees, for instance. Seems sensible. So to do that, we're going to need one more memory unit, and we're going to need one more processor unit, and I'm probably going to need to move this around a little bit. So why don't I just take this apart anyway, because it's not terribly hard to reconstruct. Yep, that's fine. Let's just put these processors down on the floor, just so I've got somewhere to hold them all. And I've got enough cable coil. I probably have. Let's just grab our tools for that. So I'm probably going to want to put, let's just move that and that. And let's just put our readers on one side, maybe. Let's put the processors in first and the memory. So, whoops, put you there. So if we have another memory unit, I'm going to need my cutters. There he goes. Annoying sometimes. Let's just drop it on the floor instead. There we go. So we're going to have 2 of those, and that means I probably should remove this side as well. Let's just get it all out of the way. And drop those. Let's collect all of our cable coil together. Right, so a minimum and a maximum. So let's just label them, shall we? So let's just label you min. And let's label you max. Should be simple enough to understand. And then this is the minimum, 318. So we probably want 100 degrees, so that's 373. So if we just grab our screwdriver and go up to 400, and then use Alt to go down to 370, and then normal to go up to 373, but on the little buttons instead of the large buttons. So somewhere between 318 and 373 would be fine for us. In fact, let's just up that a little bit. So maybe 333 and 373. That gives us a 40-degree range. Fine. Now I'm just going to put down a couple of processes. So what we're going to be doing is reading in the temperature from here. So that's going to need to go into a compare process. In fact, let me just remove you as well. And I'll reconnect it in a second. So the compare needs to just be read in, let's just have a look. Where do we want compare? Don't much mind here. Yeah, that should do for the moment. And then we want to go from a compare to a select unit. So I guess we've got to figure out where to put that. Let me just put a few things down just so I can minimize the amount of cabling. Okay, so this is about as simple as I can get it in terms of wiring on the wall anyway. I've moved the memory units top and bottom like that. So one, that's the minimum, that's the maximum, so it's nicely illustrative, but also it actually makes sense for the way we're going to wire this. So, and also just be aware that the reader for the temperature is only connected to the left side of the compare unit. It's not connected to anything else. Okay, so that just makes that a little bit easier to select in the future. So we want a couple of things. First of all, we're going to have to go four-way junctions here. So, whoops, four-way junctions. There we go. We're going to need to get those two. And we need to go this way. In fact, that's going to bug me if I don't change that. Where's my... There we go. We only need a regular junction there. When I get the right key. And back to four-way junctions. And I think we can just go that way. And is that a batch writer? So technically this is only a two-way junction as well, or a three-way junction. Just like that. Just put a straight cable here. And then everything else is just a couple of corners, I think. Sorry, a junction as well. Okay, I think that's wired correctly. We'll see very shortly. So what we're going to do is go back to our screwdriver. And we're going to say the input here is the heater room temperature. That's the only thing you can select. So that's really easy. We're going to say less than. And then we're going to say the output of the select unit. Okay. The select unit, on the other hand, has got two inputs. It's got min and max. I'm going to... have I put this the wrong way around? Well, let's see. Yeah, they're not connected to each other, so I may have these the wrong way around, but let's give this a go. Min, max, and it's easy enough for us to just change the values. Then we want to choose the select, is fine, I guess. I want to pull that from the compare unit, and then that should be it. We're going to take the what we're going to take the value of for the writer. Let me just look at my notes. Well, in fact, it's got to be the compare unit because that's the only thing that outputs 1 and 0, so that is fine. So let's just choose the compare, and then we want to choose the... Is this... Oh, I'm not... Yeah, I haven't wired in the top correctly. That just needs another corner up there. Rotate you around. Rotate you around. And then just replace this with a junction, like this. Okay, is that now set? Let's give it a try. So we can choose the compare unit. We can then select what we want. So the output should be the wall. Do you not have connection? You should have connection. Wall heater, there we go. And the on state. So let's just make sure all of these are set to on. And the other thing that happens if I get these the wrong way around, I'm not sure if the circuit's identical. I think it is, except that the other circuit is you set greater and the min and max are swapped. And that's basically for cooling stuff down, but we don't need to worry about that. let's just turn this on. Do we have enough power? We are in the middle of the night, so this will deplete the rest of the base of power because that battery that we've got there. Yeah, we got 3. I guess I can live without the rest of the base while I try this. Let's flip this on and let's see what happens. So you're on, and you're on. Okay. The wall heaters are now on. So temperature is rising, and once it passes 333, so what's that now? That's like 60 degrees. Why don't we bring that? Why don't we bring that down just for testing this thing? So let's bring it down to 33. That's 303, 310. So 313, and let's say 323. So 310 should be 40 degrees, which it's approaching now. And in fact, we can probably turn that down a little bit more. 309, 308. Now that's still going, and that's, oh, it helps if you turn that on like that. Okay, so it's still going. That's what it should do. Now if we turn this down a little bit more, so 278, that's 5 degrees, and we turn this one down to, I don't know, 303, it's shut off. Turn it back up, 313, 323, 333. That should be back on again. Have I wired it wrong? No, I didn't wire it wrong. It is working correctly. So I set this. I just need to change this a couple of times. Reset this compare unit. It's working fine now. So minimum of 312, maximum 313. Just to demonstrate what's happening. We've got a 1 degree range right now. So obviously it's going to cycle fairly quickly. But what's happening is it's taking the room temperature, comparing it to this. So right now that's set to 312, which is the minimum. So as soon as it falls under 312, which it's about to do in 1/4 of a degree, it's going to change this to 1. That's going to flip this to compare to max. And at the same time, this is going to start the heaters because it's looking for a 1 on this unit. Because this changes to then max, it's then going to say, is this less, is the room temperature less than max? And it is, but as soon as it goes over the max, it's not going to be anymore. So it flips this back again to 0, which turns off the heaters, and then it starts falling back towards the minimum value. I hope that's clear. If it isn't, do let me know in the comments. It does take a little bit of wiring the first time you do one of these. Haven't done one since last season, so it took me a little bit as well. But yeah, no, otherwise it is going to work perfectly well, I think. All I need to then do is just change the values I actually want to keep this to. Indeed, we can use the same circuit. I'm not going to do it this episode because I'm going to complete the rest of this setup next episode because we're just running out of time. We can use this to, instead of comparing two values, we can just allow for a range if we wanted to. So we could have this kind of range and then run a circuit off that to then control what we insert into the pipes. Now, that may not be able to be done with a single Schmitt trigger. So if anyone wants to comment between the episodes, I'm sure there was plenty of different suggestions between the last episode and this one about just how that can be done. For this setup, they may well have the same thing between these setups. So let me give you an example of a naive version. Naive version is we set two identical sets of these circuits. So if it's between a minimum value, let's say 1 degree above where we ideally want it, so let's say that's 35 degrees. If it's between 36 and 40, it starts inserting cold gas. We set up an identical setup to this right here, well, somewhere else, but you get the idea, saying between 34 degrees, in fact, do we want Schmitt triggers at all? Because if it goes past the upper bound, we're in trouble. Yeah, no, we'll have to go for something else. Yeah. I'm going to leave it till next episode. I'm going to have a think. You guys have a think, and we'll meet back up and see what we've come up with for next episode. In any case, we've got a nice heating and cooling system ready now. The cooling's already hooked up, so this will work as before, but doesn't need main atmospheric to do it. We have this valve to add more pollutant if we need it. Otherwise, it works pretty well. We've got a battery backup that now hopefully has hit full, which means it should no longer be draining my main batteries and turning the rest of the... Oh no, it is still draining the main batteries because those machines are off. Yeah, so as soon as it stops draining or as soon as it hits full, then we'll get the rest of our base back, just because of these wall heaters consuming power when they turn on. But of course, they're not turning on fully at the moment. And the room itself is 39.5, so clearly it's not quite accurate just yet, but you know, I'll play around with that next time. And yeah, what's the room temperature at the moment? Yeah, 312. It has triggered already, so it's just keeping it between 312 and 313, so that's 27, 37, 39 degrees. So 39.5. I was accurate. There we go. So if we want to change that, we just change the upper bound and fall all the way back to 39 and whatever. So if I just change that to up that to 373 now. The next time it falls below the minimum value, it will heat, but it will heat and then only turn off when it reaches that top value. It won't turn on immediately just because of how the whole system works. Okay? Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I know it's been a bit of an explainy episode rather than a buildy episode. And the next one may have to be as well. Depends on how complex this heating cooling loop gets. But it's working okay so far. I'm fairly happy. Hope you are. As always, guys, thanks for watching.